Welcome everyone to Homie and the Dude, the father and son podcast. Today you're watching episode 3 of D&D Diaries, Road to Streaming. This episode is railroading. Good or bad? That's the question, guys. And the reason that we want to talk about railroading today is because I suffered from a heavy case of being a train conductor as a DM in our second session of the Lost Mines of Phandelver. Now, last time we talked about the first session of Lost Mines, and we talked about some things that we learnt, some things that we were working on, an implementation of the rule of cool and stuff like that. But this week we want to talk about how, after completing the Cragmore hideout section of the story, the team ventured into Phandalin, the town, and from there, what ensued. So, what went down was we got to Phandalin, and you guys met Barthen's Provisions. I had Barthen from Barthen's Provisions come and meet you at the center, at the edge of town, basically where his shop is. Had a little bit of a chat with him. He directed you, as you had collected the supplies in the Cragmore hideout, for the Lion Shield Coster, and you went there basically the next day after spending some time in the inn, the Stonehill Inn. However, what I found was, so for people who've played the Lost Mines, you will know this. For those of you who haven't, this is spoilers. But there is a bunch of like side quests within the town that you can do that gathers more information for the main quest, basically. So there's going to Thunder Tree, there is going to the Waven Tor, there's going to the Old Owl Well, and then there's visiting the Banshee Agatha. All of them are actually really interesting now that I've spent some time longer as a DM, but at the time I believed that Thunder Tree was very interesting because it had a dragon there for the players to deal with. I believe that,
which we never got to,
which you never ended up doing. I believed that the Agatha Banshee interaction was interesting because it wasn't a combat interaction, it was more of like a role play. You had to like talk to her and make a deal and like persuade and that kind of stuff. So I was like, that's a little bit different, as a lot of this feels very combat heavy. So I kind of pushed you guys more so in those directions. So by pushing them in that direction, I mean the beginning of railroading, where I presented you with certain NPCs to give you certain information. So for example, Tracy's character, she played the halfling rogue that was available in the starter pack, and the part of the backstory for that character is that they're related to one of the people in Phandalin, Quaileen Alderleaf, and Quaileen was going to tell her about Thunder Tree and that they might be able to get information about how to get to Cragmore and save Gundren, which is the main quest of the story, through meeting someone there at Thunder Tree. So I was prepared to give her that information, and I actually tried to push to give her that information when we were role-playing, me and her interacting, but Tracy never let on to what the group was doing in Phandalin, so I could never actually give her that piece of information, which is why the Thunder Tree part never really worked out.
Yeah.
However, there's another part where you guys were like walking through town, and some people were getting supplies, other people were at the pub, you know, you guys were a bit all over the town. And you and Ryan were walking through town. I had Sister Grail come and talk to you guys about something that was going on with her to do with Agatha the Banshee. You guys ended up agreeing to helping her, particularly because Ryan and her were flirting a little bit, and so our buddy Ryan was flirting with Sister Grail's character, and he ended up agreeing to assist her. So from there it was quite interesting.
Didn't she entice him with some sort of like reward at the end?
Yeah, of course, yeah. And so what was interesting was you guys began heading towards Agatha, and at that point I was like, great, you're going towards the thing that I want you to go into, but I haven't prepped Agatha yet. I've actually prepped the red brands. So what I'd then also done is railroaded you guys into making sure that no matter what in this second session, before you left Phandalin, you were going to be dealing with the red brands.
Yeah.
So whether that was an encounter at the edge of town, whether that was you bumping into one of them, whether that was you guys going to the Sleepy Giant Inn or whatever, I was going to have it so that you guys had to deal with them and probably head up to the Tresender Manor to go and deal with the red brand crew and Glassstaff, Yarno, Albrecht, or Albeck. My apologies for awful pronunciation. The issue with all of this, guys, is, and I've just described a lot of what happened, but the issue with it is that I forced the players into a position that they could have easily got there themselves through time through roleplay, through extensive roleplay in the town, through meeting people, asking more questions, being curious, making decisions for themselves. Instead, I was worried about crushing all of this into one session, so the roleplay in Phandalin mixed with the Tresender Manor, which I thought we were going to be able to do at least half, maybe 3/4 of the manor. I didn't think we would be able to do all of it in one session, but I definitely thought we could get a large chunk done. What ended up happening was the roleplay ended up taking much longer than I expected, and the manor, we only did about like 1/4 of the manor in terms of the dungeon that's under the manor. And the problem with that being is that I should have let you guys breathe. I should have let you have the time in Phandalin to interact with the people more, to role play a bit more and understand a bit more of the town. And instead, every time you talk to someone, I was just feeding you the information that I knew I needed to give you, and I was almost forcing you down the path. Like even when you met the town master, who wasn't part of my plan because he predominantly sets up like I believe the Waven Tour section with the orcs, and I believe he does a bit more of that setup, if I remember correctly, from his like the information that he can give the players. But you guys met him, and I ended up using him to guide you guys more towards the Red Brands by offering you guys a reward to get them out of the town. I played him quite funny as well, but still I pushed you guys towards the Red Brands, and I was like, oh, can you please help us as soon as possible? You know, as opposed to being like, you know, when you guys get a chance, you know, could you go see what's going on over there, kind of thing.
And can I give you a counterpoint?
Go for it,
To kind of almost justify the fact that I know you did it for your reasons, but I think to some degree, and this is why I like railroading, good or bad, we're such a new group at that point that not really understanding how roleplay works and discovering things in town and like different levels of confidence as players and everything, I think we kind of needed it a little bit as well, just because at some point we might have been like, okay, well, what do we do? And then there would have been dead silence, you know, that type of thing. So I think we needed a little bit of nudge. So to some degree, maybe beginner groups need a little bit more direction as they're discovering who they are as a group.
100%. And do you know, it was something I got feedback from Ryan, one of our players, who's also one of our, like, helping us write some of this homebrew that we're working on, you know, for this stream that this series is leading towards. And he gave me some feedback, and he said, I sit there and I think when you're DMing, where is the Tolkien level of detail? But while I'm thinking, where is the Tolkien level of detail in Bodhi's DMing, I'm also going...
Tolkien, J.R. Tolkien.
Like his level of detail that he puts into his writing, like description of like one scene, one character, one like flower, one moment, you know, he really goes into extreme depth. And Ryan was like, why isn't Bodhi going into that level of depth? But then at the same time, he's going, wow, I also really appreciate that he keeps the plot moving, make sure that we are all having fun, keeping everyone involved. So it was some nice feedback from me, because it's entirely true. I'm not the best with giving detail and things like that, and the role play, and we talked about that last time. But so the one thing that I am better at is like keeping them on a main plot, and I think that was, like you said, this is why there's pros and cons to railroading, and this is why, you know, what Tom just said about an early group not really knowing what they're doing, not really knowing how to play the game, a little bit of railroading and a little bit of like nudging from the DM definitely helps. But now, as a DM who's done it a while and watched a bunch of people and learnt a bunch, I realized that I would actually like to open my sessions up and make them more of a collaborative experience, as opposed to one where I'm like driving you guys in a direction that I think will be most fun for you guys. Now, they were fun experiences. You enjoyed the Red Brands. You enjoyed the Agatha Banshee situation, because that was hilarious. And it got you to the Cragmore Castle, which was the next big step in the main quest, the main plot that was going on, aside from these side quests. So it's not like it ended up being a bad thing, but I, as a DM, realized that I shorted you guys of potential creativity and potential for you guys to explore a bit more and expand and enjoy more of the world that you guys were in, as opposed to, we have a mission, let's complete the mission, you know, and that kind of thing. And I think sometimes I'm such a Hollywood movie guy, and I'm such a come from animes and TV and stuff like that, that I often, you know, see it as like, cool, we've got to like keep the plot moving, you know, kind of thing. And what I forget is that side story and character development is the reason why I love anime so much is actually because the character development you get from these weird filler episodes and side plot is sometimes some of the best bit about the show.
Yeah. It's a weird balance though, man. It is a weird balance because, you know, like railroading, like if we were to encounter what we did going through Fandolin that first time now as a group, we would feel railroaded.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you need to have that as a DM in your back pocket, depending on the circumstance. If it's a younger group, I mean, we've talked about in our homebrew, I mean, we can get to that in a minute, the reasons why we have to consider railroading at this point in time in the homebrew. But it isn't a fast and hard rule. Like, it's just something you need to consider. And I think the less amount you can railroad, the better, but to be prepared that if I need to railroad in this situation, I can justify doing it. Yeah,
and it's like you said, it's something that you want to be able to whip out of your tool belt. You don't want it to be the main thing that you're using all the time. So Tom's 100% right there, and I think, you know, the DM community, from what I can tell on Reddit and Twitter and stuff, is pretty split on railroading as well, in terms of a lot of people really hate it, a lot of people find it that they use it quite a lot, and there's a lot of people in the middle as well. But something that Tom said is, you know, we've learned a lot from when we did the Lost Mines of Phandelver, and for me as a DM, I railroaded a decent amount in Lost Mines. And then starting our homebrew, we actually ran our first session for our test group a few months ago, and it was very open. We planned it very open. We made it very open. But again, I fell back into the trap of trying to deliver information, condense things into a session, and it needs to be one session that we're going to fill all of this into, and this is going to be, you know, one session. And I'm like, and that was an issue. Me trying to keep it on a time schedule, trying to keep it paced and trying to keep it moving, meant that, again, even though we'd ridden our first island, so for people who don't know, our homebrew is based in floating islands. We have a bunch of floating islands, and our starting floating island we designed to be full of just characters that the PCs need to go gain some information from about something that's dwelling in the island, basically below the surface. And I just ended up pushing you guys around the island rather than letting you guys interact and interrogate and digest more. And it ended up me falling back into the same habit. Now, again, I've been able to realize that, see it, learn from it, and hopefully it will be different going forward. But you're 100% right. I thought I had learnt from Lost Mines, and I have learnt a lot. But again, I fell back into the same thing. So it's something that I still need to work on, is making sure that when I'm delivering roleplay, when I'm delivering information that needs to be, it's not something where I am just feeding you guys that info. I need to keep some back. I need to reserve things. I need to allow you guys to really push me to get some information in certain cases. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, my sense of, as the very, very little time I've been DMing, I get a little bit insecure with, like, you know, I've prepared stuff, and, you know, that moment of uncertainty, like, where are they going to go, and are they going to go to a place that I have not prepared at all, is kind of scary, right? Yeah. So I remember, like, that first session, there's an element of, in first sessions, that I think especially they need, you know, characters need to breathe, they need to discover each other, they need to introduce themselves to each other, they need to almost like establish the climate. It's like a cocktail party, right? Let's get to know each other a little bit. And it felt like we had a little bit of that, but again, I think, I'm not sure if this is the case, but it felt like perhaps there was some insecurity on, we're spending too much time here. We've got like a 6-hour time slot. Like, we need to get moving. You know, that type of thing.
100%. And that's one of my biggest things, is trying to like fit stuff into time. And I'll come back to something I said earlier. You need to give your players time to breathe. You need to allow it to move organically. If as a DM you're pushing them forward and moving them, you are doing an injustice to your players and to yourself as a DM. Like, don't get me wrong, there's times where they're in the pub and they're getting drunk for the third day in a row, and you're like, shit, guys, we need to do something here. Do you know what I mean?
Especially if there's actual drinks on the playing table.
But I also go, you know, at the end of the day, it does need to move organically, and you need to give your players that time to be able to move at the pace at which they feel is right. So it's something that I am learning a lot more about myself as a DM, and about how I need to operate in this, that, and the other.
Let me just say one thing about that. The real reason I think that space needs to be there is because that's mostly where the magic moments happen. That's where the creativity of we're going to make this decision it's absolutely like not a decision that we should be making right now, or someone is going to have a creative solution in a situation that no one has ever thought about in that situation. And if you're marching forward too much, you don't have time to be creative as players. And that's where, like, those are the memorable moments. Like, going back, all of those moments needed that little bit of space for us to just do something that's unorthodox, completely unorthodox. So to me, that's the main reason, to give space, to allow those types of, interactions and experiences of what's going on in that certain situation.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think, like I said, I fell back into the trap in our first session of the homebrew, right after I thought I'd learn. I fell back into it. But guys, that's what life is. You learn, you make the mistake, you got to just keep moving forward and keep, getting better. And that's what we're trying to do. So it comes down to railroading, good or bad. The answer is useful, but not always. You have to know how to manage it. It's like anything, it needs moderation.
Yeah.
Like everything in life, you need to moderate how much you railroad, and it needs to really be only to, if your players are stagnant, to like help them forward, or if you're like really needing to push some sort of plot or something like that would be something else, I would say.
That's kind of where we are right now with the
go for it, yeah.
Yeah, with our homebrew. Because we're developing this setting, this world, and it is in pieces, and those pieces are just ahead of where the team is right now, the group is right now, and because all of the pieces, all of the options aren't created, we have to steer them in certain areas. That's the only parts that are developed at this point. So we are playing, kind of trying to play clever with giving them options. But those options all lead to the same place. So it's a little bit of it's a little bit of trickery or whatever. Yeah. But
it's the classic. There's two islands, guys, in front of you. Which island would you like to go to? Yeah. And it doesn't matter which island they choose. You've only written one island, yeah. So it doesn't matter which one they choose. They end up at the island you've written. But this is the thing. Like, that's a sneaky way that you can railroad without your players, giving them the illusion that they're choosing an option, but then also still making sure that it fits what you need. Now, what Tom
unless they call bullshit on you and say, "Well, tell us a little bit about both islands."
Exactly, but then it's about improv. It's about you just got to go for it. So I think what Tom's right though. What we're working on at the moment is we've got to a place in our homebrew where we're like 2-3 sessions in. We've got them moving through the land. We've got them pretty much on the main quest at this point. However, we're about to throw them their first side quest that links to the main quest, but aligns them with a certain group, basically with pirates actually. So we wanted to leave that. We wanted to make that quite direct, but. We also wanted to make sure that after this is where the world unlocks, basically. So at the moment, we are pushing them towards making this decision with the pirates, because it will then set them up for where they stand in our world. But after that, it's going to be very much more open world. We're not planning on driving them in any direction. We want them to be a lot more organic and make decisions for themselves. So we are getting to that point, but it is... like Tom said, because we've not developed as much of this homebrew world and we're running it while we're developing it, as opposed to, some people spend 2-3 years of their life making a homebrew world and then going for it. We are very much writing it as we're playing it, and so because of that, it means that we are having to railroad. We are trying to think about plot too much, and it's something that constantly me and Tom are checking each other on. We're checking ourselves on. Yeah. We're pulling back. We're changing things, and we're making sure that we're doing our best in terms of delivering a open experience for this to be a collaborative storytelling thing. This is one of the biggest things that I've learned as a DM, is that D&D is collaborative. It is about you guys as players helping me build the world as much as I build the world. And what I mean by that is not you sit and decide things with me before a session and help me prep. I mean, in the moment of, there's a hooded figure in the corner of the room. Tom, describe to me what you can see. Like, what of his facial features you can see? Or, what does you hit them. Tell me what attack do you do? Describe your attack to me, kind of thing. So I want to be able to do more of that and make it more open, but we're getting there.
We're getting there, yeah. It's been a fun process for sure. Railroading is useful.
Railroading is useful, guys.
But don't use it as a crutch. Yeah, because you do limit the experience for sure.
So yeah, useful in moderation. Hope this helps, guys. This has been episode 3 of D&D Diaries. We're Homie and the Dude. We'll see you next time, guys. We're chugging through. We're loving doing this stuff for you guys. If you want to support us, if you want to make sure that we can keep getting, better quality set, better quality lights, make the filming better.
Bigger batteries for the camera.
Bigger batteries for the camera.
Yes!
All that kind of stuff. You can do that by just liking, following the page, and subscribing to the YouTube channel. That is what really makes a difference to us.